Yay, yay. Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
We're here. A few of you are. We're going to give people a little chance to come in. Um, Hi, Annette. Annette, I did get your question and we're going to look at it for you. Uh, but congratulations on making a decision about it. My parents, I know nothing about that process except my parents and my brother went through it because my brother was born in Canada. I was born after my parents crossed and came into the States. But we'll look at your immigration thing.
That'd be great.
Well, we did, and that's the only question I got today. So if anybody else has um, Dream Journey One says hi to Dr. Gail. Hi.
Hey, everyone. How are you doing? I know y'all are wondering why in the world I'm over in the elementals because I deal with the ETs and aliens, but I've gone kicking and screaming into the elementals. And I have been calling Nancy Jean all the time about this, how I have moved to Mount Shasta to deal with the ETs, but it's the elementals that have shown up for me. And I've had to do some work for them, and I've got a lot of funny stories with that. But I do think the elementals are the ones that are connecting us from humans to ETs. And I think they're like the middle ground. And I think we will be working with them or noticing them first, is what my feeling is now. I'm not sure if you feel like that too, Nancy Jean.
Yeah, I do. I do. As our vibration gets higher, and that's we're really going into a season where that's going to happen. If you've been watching Danny, he's been talking about it quite a bit.
Right.
Um, a lot of thinkers and people who do astrology and that sort of stuff, we're lining up to have some really huge things. Oh, and that's from Canada. Good girl. Yay. Uh, um, but a lot of them are saying that we're now going back into another accelerated season, that things are really going to change as the major planets move out of signs they've been in for years. They're moving us to a place where consciousness is going to become what everybody is thinking about, talking about, and seeing. Just like 2 years ago at 8/8 Lionsgate, when we saw a lot of people in a lot of different pathways, but they were kind of getting into one scrunchy group. And then, as shortly after Lionsgate, the people, their opinions and their consciousness and their awareness was going to change, and we're going to be like in two streams, like they're walking. And as you get farther and farther apart, as they get to that Y and we got further into it, that the gulf between those who have a certain level of consciousness and those that don't, and it's all a choice, was going to get greater. And the other thing that happened was time started moving faster, which I find is true. I'm just time, it's like I can't believe we're on the 23rd of February already. It is the 23rd, isn't it? Maybe that's probably why I can't do it, because it's 21st.
Maybe it's slowing down for you.
Maybe it's slowing way down. But anyway, do you want to take care of Annette's question first, and then we
Yeah,
can?
let's go ahead and take care of that because I what okay, you can pull the question up so I can look
Yeah,
at it. And I don't know if y'all knows my process. My process is I'm a scribbler, a writer. I don't have a term for it. I know there is one. And so and I just the answer just comes to me. I have a lot of guys that will bring the answer to me. So I just channel it.
And the end of the question is, the application is forever long with many unusual questions, except you can only have 200 characters in the comments below. So she ran out of room, but I knew what she was asking.
Okay.
So I'm going to pull in, maybe probably not the best. Well, I don't know. Dealing with the U.S. government, the wild elementals might be a good deck.
Well, I immediately get that it will be a process. There'll be a few bumps, but it's not going to be as big of a struggle as you hear because you're prepared for it. And there's going to be some aggravating things about it, but I think you're going to actually sell through the process because you are prepared, more prepared than most people on the hurdles that you're going to go through. So you go ahead. Nancy.
Okay, this is a very dark card, but well, actually, it shows up better on the camera than it does.
Mhm.
It's the cougar, and in this in the it's called the Wild Elementals is the deck, and they're really beautiful.
Wild
And-
animals.
yeah, wild elemental, and the cougar. What the cougar is? It's it's highlights our proper use of leadership and power, balancing power, intention, strength, and grace, self-confidence, freedom without guilt, sensuality. Well, I don't know. That's going to fit into your coming in, but cunning and enigma. And it says the cougar is a solitary cat. When you catch a cougar prowling into your life, he is bringing you the message that you have to come into your own power. Now is the time to take the lead in the situation. Now is the time to be strong. He is here to let you know that now is the time to leap into new opportunities made available to you. Using the power of his intentions, be clear of what your purpose is, and you will define where you are heading. So I think he's a great card to pull
Yep.
if you're trying to go into citizenship. He's saying you're on the right path.
Yeah. I think that's good. So yeah. So anyway, I think she's prepared for it.
Okay. I hope that answers your question. It looks like it's a go in it. It doesn't look like.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to start off with a story.
Okay.
Elemental stories, if that's okay.
That's great.
As I said, I've gone in kind of kicking and screaming with these elementals, and they woke me up one night announcing themselves, and they are loud. They're a loud group, and they're going, "We are the elementals." Woke me out of my sleep in the middle of the night, and I'm just sitting there going, "Who are these people?" And because I'm used to dealing with ETs and aliens, so I'm used to seeing them all the time. The elementals, the first ones that showed up were looked like the gnomes, and they never have given me their actual names, but I just assuming from reading and talking to Nancy Jean that that's who they were, because I'm not as familiar with the subject as Nancy Jean is. I have to go by my experiences. So anyway, they said they were the elementals, and they were loud, and I just. And then they said the next night they came again, and they said they wanted me to go work on these stars and trees. And I'm going, wait a minute, I'm going to call Nancy Jean and get Johan to go do this. This is his thing. He's ley line. He deals with them. That's not my thing. So I get in touch with her, and she says, oh, yeah, I'll get him. It must be a message from me to him, through hers.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out he was on paternity leave. And we didn't get a response. So they came back to me about 2 weeks later and said, I had to do it. So I had to go out to, and I agreed to it. And I had to go to, it was Peru and Alaska. I had to go to the stars and hook. In Peru, it was 3 stars to a portal tree or a spirit tree. And then I had to go to Alaska and hook the stars, 5 stars from the stars to the portal trees. And it was a communication thing for them from the ETs that went to the portals. And first thing I did was the first one I did, it was to get up on the tree, go up to the star. And these are sphere lines or whatever you call them. And I get up on the first star and I'm like lassoing it. I'm from the South. I'm going to lasso the star and I will send this cord down. Anyway, they're sitting there all shaking their heads. No. And the reason I do it is because I deal with the ETs and the aliens. I'm out on the space all the time. So they're earthbound. So that's why I was chosen to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that at this time. Nancy Jean had to walk me through it. And so I had to hook these, and then they were able to communicate through these lines that are connected to the trees. And the trees are real important on Earth. They it was actually connected to the roots, and the roots go down, and that is their communication system to the stars, down through the trees, to the roots. And anyway, that was my first adventure with elementals. As I said, have just crawled in and kicking and screaming into this because I'm in Mount Shasta, and I thought for sure I was coming here to deal with the ETs because that's who I work with. And So anyway, that's my first story. The next, and that was Earth. The next one would be wind. So Nancy Jean, you go ahead and talk about your stuff, and I'll go into the next adventure I had with the elementals.
Dr. Gail goes into outer space. I stay at home and read. And for those of you who don't understand how I got to know the elementals, I was carried off one night by a dragon whose name is Cecil, who is my dragon. And he carried me around the world. It was really fascinating. We were like flying through cities, and you could see the sort of like the Eiffel Tower in Paris and stuff. So I kind of knew what I was flying over. And then he says, "We have to go here now." And I knew it was somewhere in the North Atlantic. And from my reading and research, I think this cave is supposed to be off the coast of Ireland. Anyway, it was like a hole in the water. It was like a whirlpool, and we dove down into it. It carried me in there. We landed in a very Tolkien-esque kind of place, a woods in it. And he said, "You can get off now." And I got off, and out of the woods came a whole bunch of elementals. I mean fairies and Siths and gnomes and unicorns and all kinds. I mean, just kind of the whole array of fairy tale, what we call fairy tale characters, came out, and they said, "Well, welcome, you've made it to the party." And I went into the woods with them, and there's this huge clearing, and they were having a party, and they were dancing, and they had this beautiful music, and they were just kind of talking. They were coming up. It's like I'd walked into a party somewhere, with people with very elaborate wings and things. And they were doing different rituals. They were around the camp. There was a fire in the middle, and they were doing the different rituals. And I said, kind of, "Why am I here?" And they said, "Oh, because you get us, you understand us, and you can see us."
Now that's
And
not fair. You go to parties and they put me to work.
I know. I mean, you got the bad part of this job, I tell you. So at the end of the evening, they said, "It's time for you to go back." And I woke up. I remember getting on Cecil, but then I woke up and I was home. And well, that was kind of fun. And then I didn't think any more about it, except it was kind of an interesting, very elaborate dream. About 3 or 4 days later, this was coming up on the last time I did 9 candles. I got nudged in the middle of the night, and it was Cecil at the end of my bed. And he goes, "We got to go again." And I went, "What?" And so this time they weren't partying. This time they were waiting at the very edge of the meadow where I'd met them. And they were like, "You didn't get the message. You didn't do it." And I said, "What am I supposed to do?" And I was supposed to um, explain to people that they have got to get in line. They have to start learning about ley lines. They have to start learning about earth energies that are tied to the earth. That too many people think all the answers are going to come from ETs in outer space, and that there's a whole history we have here that humanity abandoned. And I've been reading a book about that, when humanity quit seeing the elementals all over the world. And it was when we went into the Industrial Revolution. It started about in the 1700s. And of course, the church did a lot to try and make people not see the elementals. But anyway, they said, you understand rituals, and people have to understand part of the ways to get to learn about us and to feel us is to deal with rituals and to figure out ley lines and to figure out the things that are in nature and to figure out how to work with gardens. So I started looking up when I got home, got back, I started looking all the stuff up, and I did my last 9 candles was building up to the fact that, and this will happen again on the 20th of March, on the day that we have equinoxes and solstices, all the ley lines in the earth go straight. And they didn't, I mean, this is sort of a relatively new thing. If you don't know what ley lines are, I've got shows about that too. But ley lines are an energetic force that surrounds us like a web. It's like a web that's in the earth. And I actually have one out in front of my house, which they neatly provided for me. If you want to find a ley line near you, one of the things you can look for is a tree with a lot of gnarls on it. because those are when a tree has grown over a ley line and there's so much energy coming through the ley line up into our world, from the center of our world, that they distort the trees. These things, they'd be like a cancerous growth for some
Yeah,
people.
do you have your picture that you can show them what it looks
Let
like?
me see if they're here.
Better do I have to ask?
Yeah, this is my gnarly tree. This is my gnarly tree that's across the street from me in a little park.
Mhm.
And I kept saying, I want to find a ley line. And I was told by someone who works with these earth energies that if you find a tree, well, normally they have like one or two. This tree's just covered with them. So I went out there and I looked, and off the tree, if I still have them. Okay. Off from that tree, this was right after frost. This yellow path, is color's not very good. My camera doesn't do very good color, but that's a yellow line, and it's like a yellow brick road. And I asked them, and I was informed that that is the ley line that runs through this tree. It comes in from this direction and goes out the other side. And I'll tell you this much about when you start dealing with them, ley lines, there's a lot of energy involved in a ley line. I did find my little thing. This is Cecil. This is my dragon. And that picture came to me through Dr. Gail.
Mhm.
I was telling her about my dragon, and then a friend of hers sent her this picture. And this is not the kind of art your friend normally does, isn't it? She doesn't.
Oh, not at all. And she wasn't sure why she was drawing it.
Yeah, well, I can tell you why she was drawing it, because
Yeah.
she saw me.
Yeah. And that's Meg, who you hear me talk about all the time.
Yeah.
She's the one that has walked me through my whole process and
Right.
Jilly told me I wasn't crazy because she knew me.
We encourage people who think that way around us. So this is the portal.
Or something's wrong with me. She's the one that helped me through it all. So
This is the portal I went into. And she painted those two pictures at the same time, the dragon and then the portal. And she had no idea what she was painting them about. And then Dr. Gail sent them to me, and I said, yeah, that's the portal I went into. And the elementals that I met, the fairies and the gnomes and there were the water creatures some people, there's a lot of different words for the same kind of creatures, but what it is an energy that was actually born on this planet. And so it's there. That's why if you read some of the fairy tales, some of the fairies are not very nice because they tend to have more human characteristics that way. So in the midst of all this, I did find an interesting book, and I just read it, and that's it on the bottom. The Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries by W.Y. Evans Wentz. And you probably have never heard of this person because he wrote this book in 1911. And what he did was good old W.Y. went to in Scotland and Ireland and parts of England and Wales and in Brittany, where they've had a strong tradition of fairy faith. And now he was doing this in the early 1900s. He interviewed people from 1907 to 1909, and then he wrote the book. And that was his PhD thesis. But it was actually slightly more interesting than I think most PhD theses are. But what he talked about, and he got his PhD in Oxford, and he was an expert in spiritualism and animism, which is finding life and everything. And the people he was interviewing, it wasn't just their stories that would be like his contemporaries, which would be like older than my grandparents, probably many of your great grandparents. But he was talking to people who were telling him the stories their grandparents or their grandmothers had told them. And I figured it backwards, and his grandparents were alive during the American Revolution. And they were talking about how there was so much more of the activity between humanity and the fairies and the other elemental folks before the Industrial Revolution came, but when the Industrial Revolution came, it lowered the whole vibration of humanity, and therefore we couldn't see them anymore. And they told me they actually went into this other dimension to hold on to their power, and they have a reason that they're going to come back out because they were aware of the ETs and they are going to be a way that connects us. And then that goes all back into earth energies and sacred geometry and consciousness and all this other stuff. And that's what I do for in my time off, is read about that stuff. And that's the kind of elementals.
I know you read about it and I experience it.
Yeah, she comes and says, why does it work like this?
Yeah, because my next thing, can I go into the next story of the
Sure.
elementals?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, first off, let me just finish about, I forgot one important detail about connecting to the stars, to the trees. When it goes down to the roots, that's how the information goes out to all the trees. And then the birds land on the trees, and the birds send out information to all the animals, was what they told me the next day. That's how important connecting the stars to the trees, because it gave information to all the trees and all the animals, which is fascinating. But I don't know how many months later, but here come the craziest dream I thought I had ever had. And when this dream was, as I saw all these little humans riding fruits and vegetables. And I was asleep and I woke up and saw that and I thought, oh gosh, that was crazy. I must need to eat more fruits and vegetables. Went back to sleep. There they were again. And it was like maybe 50 to 100 of them. They're small all around me. And so I went back to sleep thinking that's a crazy dream. I'll never remember that. Woke up again. I think probably got in the bathroom, went back to sleep again. And there they were again. Now this time I'm going, okay, this is more than just a crazy dream. And sure enough, they are of air, and I'm going to call them fairies because I don't know those other names. I can't even pronounce it. But they were little humans. And the one I remember the most was a man with a khaki pants and a blue long sleeve shirt on, riding a pea. He was riding a pea. And I just going, this is truly crazy. But anyway, there's a trail that I go on. This is leading up. This is what they wanted me to do. Of course, I always have to do some kind of work. There's a trail that I go on that's here in Mount Shasta that is not on the touristy list. It is kind of an off thing that the locals know, and it's where our people all go with their dogs to walk. It's absolutely beautiful trails. It's green. It has streams, water. It's just beautiful. And it even has benches along the way where you can meditate. Of course, I'm calling Nancy Jean going, there are no birds. There are no small animals in this whole area. It really bothered me that I didn't see or hear any birds or small animals in this area because it's absolutely beautiful. You would think there would be lots of it. And I'd call her over and over again going, what is going on? She finally said, take your pendulum out there and see if it's a ley line. Well, sure enough, I did. And my pendulum was just rocking like crazy. That is, yes, it was a ley line. And then these fairies were wanting me, when I was sitting there on the bench and testing all this, they wanted me to go out there 7 days in a row for, all I had to be was 5 minutes because it's snowing and sleeting and everything. I wasn't real sure how I was going to get to that trail, but they just wanted me to go at least 5 minutes. And they needed my energy there to repair the ley lines on that area. So I went 7 days. Of course, I was down there more than 5 minutes because if you get down there, you want to stay longer. But I went down there and I went 7 days in a row down to the place. And sure enough, the seventh day, I heard birds. It was the first time I'd ever heard birds down there. And they just said they needed my energy. And I'm going, what in the world? My energy? How can my energy help repair the ley lines? Just going there. But sure enough, the seventh day, I started hearing birds. And now every time I go out there, I do hear the birds. I haven't seen all animals come back yet, but I am hearing the birds. So that was my experience with the next one. I can't wait to see what happens now with, what do I have left now? Water and fire. I can't wait to see what they want me to do.
Well, fires, they're going to be salamanders. Those little guys are the fire.
Oh, well, I see those all the time on the East Coast.
Well, then that's maybe where you're going to go back to the East Coast. Who knows?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Somebody said, an elementals, I started to say to you, they're an energy that's here. We see them in human form. That's the way our consciousness perceives them. Uh, and they can be dragons. And the interesting thing about dragons is all over the world, every myth and legend, every sort of uh, consciousness structure that the humans have come up with, from the indigenous people in the Americas to Africa to India to China, and supposedly the rulers on the chrysanthemum throne in Japan rode away on a dragon and disappeared for 200 years and came back, and they decided that made him the emperor. And so there, I mean, there's all kinds of connections, but the word dragon, no matter what the country is or what the linguistic base is, the word they use for dragon sounds, it's some form of dragon. It's some form of that sound, that word, all over the globe. So, they got there somehow. Um, and dragons are interesting because, and I kind of understand dragons better than some of the other elementals because, well, first of all, I know Cecil, but secondly, uh, they their energy and how they're expressed and how the myths are about them. Some places, the dragons in Western culture, the dragons are usually a pretty nasty lot. But in the Asian cultures, they were considered very wise, and it was very good to stay on their good side. Uh, but each culture kind of pictures dragons differently and works with dragons differently. And um, in the Himalayan mountains, in some of the Buddhist temples, there's a particular uh, form of Buddhism, and they always have. If you go in their temples, there's these windows at the top that are open, and they say that's so that their dragons can fly in and out. And in that culture, they don't have a nasty dragon story. My favorite dragon story came to me from Engla, who lives in Finland, who often watches our shows. I don't know when the woman sleeps, but anyway, she showed me the story that there was a young boy and girl, and they did what young boys and girls have been doing for centuries. And it was back when people were in tribal groupings in Finland, and they hung the boy, and then they took the girl out and they were told to take her out to the beach and put her on where the tide would, slowly drown her, which is just, I think I'd rather take the hanging. But anyway, they were about to tie her to this rock. The townspeople were, because that's what they were told to do. And the out of the water came a dragon. And they said, "Oh, they're sending a dragon to eat her." And he said, "No, I want to meet her, the father and the religious leader of your community that has given you this guidance to do this." So they went back and said, "The dragon's here to get her. You got to get out here and help." So the father came out and the religious leader came out, and the dragon said, "You stand over there." He had them stand to one side, and he blasted them. He killed them. And he told them to take the girl back, that she hadn't been taught well, and that these people shouldn't punish her for the fact they didn't teach her well. That's my kind of dragon.
Yeah. Well, how about
But anyway,
explaining the elementals themselves, like the earth, wind? I think that Patricia's asking.
yeah, the elements, right? The elements are earth, air, fire, and water, and those are true in all shamanism. There's the four. Actually, in some of the Asian countries, they have a fifth wood. They make wood an element, but the elementals all tie to them. They kind of, like we said, dragons and salamanders and all those things are the element that ties to fire. And then there are water sprites, and I think the fairies we tend to think of them with the wind, and it's kind of the environment that they're in. And then gnomes and brownies and those guys, not the brownies like the little kids who sell you cookies, but the original little brownie guys. Those are earth. And if you've never heard about it, so those are kind of, that's my definition of an elemental, is it's a creature that is tied to that, and not Doesn't come from outer space, doesn't come from the heavens dimensions, but comes across here and to us now. And we had another one.
Yeah, as I said, I've been going kicking and screaming into the elementals because I'm one that's the outer space person. And I think Mount Shasta, that might be why I was brought here, because it's on the East Coast, and it's easy for me to deal with the salamanders, which they're around all the time, and the water for me. So maybe here this was creating for me to work with the earth elementals and the air elementals, because I've always knew the fairies were down at that trail. I knew they were around ever since the first day I went there. And of course I met the gnomes because they were so loud. But anyway, so that's by dealing with the elementals. So we'll see what else happens. As I said, I'm the one that's doing things, and I have to run to Nancy Jean to find out what happened and who are these people.
Well, I don't know all of them, but I know a few of them. And this is Karen Johnson's. I've experienced with elementals. I took a workshop with an Apache Indians in the 90s. She told us to give part of food to the tree spirits. And they would thank me and the trees would wave. That's true. And in Ireland, in the book I was reading on fairies in Ireland, they always put out a bowl of cream and a piece of bread for the little people to keep them happy and on your side.
Chocolate.
They do like chocolate.
Yeah, and that 7 days I had to go straight. I asked them. I said, "Do I need to bring something down here every day for y'all?" And they said, "No." I said, "We just need your energy down here." But I usually take them a piece of chocolate. Of course, I get to eat the rest of the bar.
And then the other, I'm trying to see if people have questions. And someone's giving your resume. ET experiencer, nurse, chiropractor, medical intuitive, and sending them to your website.
I do have a pretty long resume, and it's amazing. I came from this medical science background to all of a sudden have this spiritual awakening to being connected to the ETs. And my transformation, as they have said in Mount Shasta, my transformation is complete. And it's just amazing how I've been thrown into this world and how many gifts keep appearing for me. And yeah.
I've got a comment for you. She says you have a unicycle pea.
It was the craziest thing. I mean, they were riding bananas and carrots, but it was the man that was riding that pea that I just kept looking at going, a pea? Riding a pea? I don't know that's what I would choose to ride.
But the other thing you can do is if you can, the importance of like learning about ley lines is to understand that it's like we have these 4 times a year that the sun does certain places and we mark it, and it's been marked for centuries. You know, that like Stonehenge is for the summer solstice and the winter solstice. We've known those things are there. And then in the early 1900s, they went back and started finding ley lines again. Now there's a geobiologist named Rory Duff, he really is interesting, guys. Don't listen to Danny Shea.
Or me, I'm with Danny. I'm totally with Danny on this one. That is the most boring man ever.
But he's saying fascinating things. And
if you need to go to sleep at night or need a nap, put him on.
Okay, quit picking on Rory. He's just British. What can I say? Anyway, he's a geobiologist, and he's done a lot of work with sacred geometry. He's done a lot of work with finding ley lines all over the world. There's another guy who's slightly more interesting than Rory, but he's not alive anymore. His name is Hamish Miller. And Tim Walter, who has a YouTube channel. Tim followed him around and was a mentee of Hamish. And Hamish was really great on earth energies and went to all of the vortexes, to all of the chakras of the earth, which Dr. Gail is living in one. But if you can listen to it, it's really interesting. And they talk about earth energies and how we're going through these enormous shifts, and a lot of it has to do, if those of you who do not know about this, but in 2017, our galaxy rotated out of this place where it was in space, where we were connected. We were covered by some sort of cloud. Don't ask me, guys, because this is all science I don't do. But all of a sudden, the photonic energy and the subatomic particles started really coming in and hitting us. And they had actually, and I knew this was a possibility because I work with crystals a lot, and the geologists had said every 13 to 14,000 years they would find this thing in the rocks where there'd been a bombardment of some kind, but they couldn't figure out what was causing it. And now they know. We rotate out of this place, and what the subatomic particles are doing is they're actually changing our DNA. That's why we're all shifting and moving so rapidly. And of course, 13,000 years ago, there was no one sitting around writing on the cave walls. By the way, we see these tiny little things coming in and upgrading us. But there was a lot of shifts in how humanity handled things back then. We're going through another one of those. That's one reason why it's important to understand and know these things, so you can understand them when you run into the synchronicities of them. But they affect everything, including the crystals. And a lot of the there's a guy named Dan Winter who is really good and really has done a lot of work on trying to understand how quantum mechanics and the world of woo go together. And I kept hearing in the last couple of years that it's actually going to be physicists who are going to get it down and help us understand what's going on around us. And I actually listened to a couple of guys. I am not even going to begin to try to translate it, but one guy studies the physics of consciousness, and the other one does it of cognitive abilities. And what they're doing is they're saying, we're going to quantify and tell you people how you do what you do. Now, mind you, my second husband was a physicist, and I have a lot of respect for that form of science. It's just not where my head moves. But I did listen to these guys, and what they're basically doing is they're right. Science is going to figure out that what we do is a part of the natural order of things. Now, they got to put it down in formulas and those weird little nomenclatures I don't follow. Personally, I used to tell my husband, who I love dearly, who died in 2004, that's lovely, honey. I just hope it keeps working.
That's how I felt taking physics in college.
I know. So there's a whole lot of shaking going on, and there's a whole lot of thought about this, and reading cards is part of it. Understanding dowsing, whether it's the pendulum or the dowsing rods, is part of it. But there's I don't need it to prove to me that what we do is good. I know what we do is good. And I know that it can be used for bad too, but for the most part, it's good. And I just got assigned the elementals, and they said, you have got to go and explain to people how the small ceremonies of their lives are how we all create a better consciousness. And that when each of us in our consciousness does good things, it raises all the boats. So,
well, I was going to say, I just saw Candy's comment in there, and she was saying something about being connected. Asking if we were being connected. Candy, yes, we are connected. I think the ET, how I get it or understand it is like the ETs are connected to the elementals that are connected to us. And that's kind of how I get it. And that's why I am experiencing the elementals. But it took me kicking and screaming going into this elemental thing, going, I'm dealing with the ETs. Why am I dealing with the elementals? But I understand now. It's all connected. And I think our understanding of the ETs are going to come through the elementals. So I think I had to experience that to start understanding that we are all connected. And I think that is going to be our link to understanding the ETs.
Yeah, and it shows you when you start to deal with it, you start to feel things differently. One of the guys who's working on consciousness, one of the physicists, they asked him if crystals were alive,
Hmm.
if stones were alive. And people ask me that a lot. They said you talk about it, and they have a definite energy about them,
They
and I
feel
guess
like they're alive.
yeah,
We,
but it depends on how you define alive. But they have they have a form of their existing can touch my consciousness. So I guess
Mhm.
I think it is. And um and this, if you grow a garden, when you grow out and you're planting things, talk to the earth, because actually you're talking to the little people that you can't see yet, and you may be able to get to see them. Um, I have a friend who has a really elaborate backyard garden, and she said on windless days she'll go out there, she'll start talking, and the bushes will start wiggling and waving. It's like they're saying, "Yeah, we know you're here."
I know
Woo!
they do that to me on this trail. The trees start waving to me in the bushes, and I know they're here. And if I'll go down there and I'll see that they're not moving, I'll sit down and go, "Okay, I'm here. Where are y'all?" And
Hmm.
they'll start coming in. So um, it's pretty amazing. I've all accepted the elementals, and I'm now working with them, and I'm glad to work with them. And I see how connected they are to the ETs.
Hmm. And we're going to be doing. I'm going to be doing. It's not 9 red candles this time. It's 9 green candles, because we're going into the vernal. Uh, the change of seasons. It's spring. It's going to be the 20th of March, but I'm going to have 10 shows at one a day before that. The first show is going to be with Danny, and we're going to discuss some of the changes that we're both kind of researching and seeing around us. And this whole drive is to get people in touch with the changes that are coming, and to focus on connecting ourselves with energies that are greater than ourselves, and to increase our consciousness, because eventually I probably I'm now I'm going to be that old lady talk. I probably won't live to see it, but there will be a time when we'll have a real understanding of consciousness, and we'll understand how much of what they were explaining to us in The Secret, that it's what your mind focuses on is what's going to be there. And that's kind of the basis of these guys that have split off and are creating these new parts of physics.
Well,
And
okay. Are you done? I
I'm
was going
done.
to I pulled a card for us today out of the Elemental Oracle deck.
Hmm.
And the card I pulled, which these cards are beautiful, um, ice. And that's it. And it says purity. Excuse me. And what it says is the way forward is clear. See nature in its purity. Let it comfort you and strip away what is unnecessary. I thought that's a great card. So people go out in nature, see the elementals, talk to the elementals, let it strip away what's unnecessary around you. And
Hmm.
that's what I'm getting for the collective today for from the elementals.
Okay. I have a comment from Earth Mama. I can see these lines from space. They were broken. Yes. And there are people right now, like Johan was, he's been on paternity leave.
Johan's
But
got to come back and help me.
I know. But there are a lot of people, in England, they take their ley lines and their energy lines and their earth lines so seriously that there's a Google site where if you find a ley line, you can map it in and say what day you observed it and how wide it was and all this stuff. I mean, they're really serious. Um, but they've had people tromping over that island for so many thousands of years, and they keep finding things in the same place. I watch some prehistory people, and they keep finding that all of these places meet, and where they meet, that's where ley lines cross and cross each other. Uh, I and they do need to be repaired, because part of the subatomic particle thing is all those particles are going into the center of the earth. And there's some people who follow this stuff more about this than I do, but they say that sometime at the end of 2024 or 2025, it's going to set up a vibration and the earth's going to ring like a bell. It's going to be like a gong. And if where the ley lines are secure, it's going to help contain that energy. And that's part of what our mission now is, to get an understanding of that. Also, it's just kind of fun. Go out in the woods and find a tree with some lumps on it. I actually, after I did my show on the gnarly tree, I got several emails where people went out and found them, and they, can see that they're there. My ley line is quite wide, and I can stand and walk up and down on it a little ways, and then I have to get off because the energy coming off of it is very intense. And Hogarth, who is the tree, he's put himself back in his he's gone down into the roots, and he told me he won't be up for a few weeks.
Well, when I moved here to Mount Shasta and I found the apartment that I'm in, we went through that. I'm on the ley line, that I'm actually living on the ley line, and we went through, and it moves through my apartment, and that was pretty amazing. That I actually picked the apartment out that's actually on a ley line. Now this one's very healthy, or maybe it wasn't healthy when I got here, but it is now, and so we had to do the pendulum again. So I think if you want to go out and find a ley line, I think Nancy, you're the one that showed me or told me how to do it. So
yeah, it's using your pendulum. You can also follow Tim Walter, Walter, Tim. He's in England, and he teaches people how to cleanse houses, how to clear houses. And if you watch some of his shows, he actually maps the house out, and then he takes his pendulum and goes over the map and to see where things are. And they have so much old energy over there. And one person's house, it was between like the church and the cemetery, and people used to stop when they were carrying the coffins, because that's how they got them around. They'd stop in front of this house and do some set of prayers, and it left an impression of grief in front of the house. So they had to go in there and kind of say, no, that accumulation of grief can be cleaned up. He works with earth energies that way. He's really a nice guy. He's well worth watching. He does a lot of live shows, and that means if they're live in England, they're probably in the afternoon here. But he lives in a gorgeous area of York. And the other thing is, go around, look and see. I try to keep it. I have a little notebooks full of different things that I keep my information about things. And earth energy, because I work with the crystals so much, it's just one of those things. It was kind of a natural for me to go into that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to look down real quickly and see if anybody else has a comment. We have a lot of readers that I know are in here today.
Yeah, I'm so glad y'all came.
Mm-hmm. And White Dragon, appropriately named, is here.
Hey, White Dragon.
Gigi is in the house. Yeah. Okay. See, and if you know some people who want to talk about this stuff, grab them, because they're dying out. I mean, we're supposed to have a new emergence of them, but my Irish grandfather always talked about the fairy folk and pukas. Yep. That's another.
So
there's a gazillion.
What are pukas?
My mental impression of them is they're like walking teddy bears.
Okay.
The kind of little people, sort of like leprechauns in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
The little people over here that were in the U.S. they called them pudwudgies.
Oh, okay. Now I've heard that.
Okay, it's just kind of like wherever your family came from.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, my family's originally from Scotland, so I guess I should be connected to the elementals.
Yes, you should. Yeah, the area where the MacLeods came from in Scotland, they were. Matter of fact, there's a whole chapter on a ghost that used to, an elemental. It wasn't a ghost. They would now go looking for it as a ghost, but it was an elemental that was on a MacLeod castle.
Right.
Yeah, you guys. Somebody just said I can't read the comments and pay attention to the talk. Well, you should try to talk and read the comments.
Oh yes, that's
Yeah,
a challenge. That is a challenge. I usually have Susie on the shows with me, and she deals with that, so I have the advantage of having her. I don't know how I would do it without her, but she manages the chat for me, so I can pay attention to what I'm doing or who I'm talking to.
Yep, this is true. My grandmother, see, grandmothers know something, always talked to her plants, and she always had the healthiest trees, vegetables, and plants.
Right, and I think it's time for us to go back to doing that. In fact, I went out in my little front yard when I first moved here. I was getting ready to work on that garden, out the weeds, and all of a sudden, I heard them screaming to me, "No!" And I backed off, and I thought, "Okay, what do I do now? If they don't want me to pull the weeds out, what am I going to do now?" So, anyway, I'm not sure.
How do I love herbs? Herbs are just weeds with a purpose.
Yeah, but how do I handle that when if you do have weeds in your garden and they don't want to be pulled out? How do you handle that? Does anybody have any suggestions out there? I'd appreciate it.
Okay, somebody said Celtic Seer says pukas are goblins.
Oh, okay.
And they are part of Irish folklore.
Okay.
So further embellish that. And Harvey the rabbit. Have you ever seen the movie Harvey? Where the guy he's the only one who can see the rabbit, and and he was a puka. It's a very funny movie. Okay. Hi everyone.
I like what
hi to everyone.
I know what Hypnicity is saying. I love any excuse not to weed. Well, you can use that excuse, Hypnicity, because as I said, I like a garden. I like my places having flowers and things, and they didn't want me to pull those weeds out. I had never had that happen before, where they were yelling at me or screaming at me. No, but I haven't done anything because I'm not really sure how to handle that.
Okay, pukas are not friendly goblins. Yeah, and when you think goblins, you don't particularly think friendly, but a lot of in the fairy tales, they are only giving humanity back what humanity took from them.
With that name, Celtic Seer, you would think she would know, or he focus.
No, I know who Celtic Seer is, and yeah, she would. She is Irish. So
okay.
Anyway, does anybody have a question? If you type it in real quick. Otherwise, we'll keep you in tune. And if you join my channel, not join it, but if you subscribe to my channel, you can join too if you want to. That's all. That's allowed. But if you subscribe to my channel, you will see the 9 candle ceremony. This time they're going to be green. You can use any color candle you want. It doesn't matter.
And if you want to learn more about the ETs or get more comfortable with that conversation, go to my channel, Dr. Gail Skywalking with Moon. And we are trying over there on that channel, trying to get comfortable with the fact that they are here, going to be here. We are going to meet them. And the elementals look like to me, they're the stepping stone to that.
Is there a link for Dr. Gail? Let me see if I put a banner up for you.
I appreciate
here's both of our emails. Mine's the first one, and I can't space them, guys. You don't understand. These banners don't allow you to go space, and make a thing. So I'm Crystal Directions, Nancy Jean at Gmail, and she's Dr. Gail Starseed at gmail.com. If you follow Dr. Gail,
my email address and my YouTube address, you can just go into Dr. Gail, and afterwards it's Skywalking with Moon. But I think you can find it by just putting in Dr. Gail on my YouTube channel.
And so everyone, I hope, has had a chance to see that. And Dr. Gail is looking for a few people who Okay.
Yeah, actually, I've started bringing on people who are having experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and so we can all get comfortable with our experiences and not think, oh, I'm crazy. That was a crazy dream, or that was a crazy experience. Trying to get people comfortable with, no, we're going to talk about it. And that's what we're doing now on my channel, along with my own experiencers.
Mm-hmm.
We've written some books about it.
No, White Dragon, I don't own any crystal skulls.
Yeah, he's just recently gotten some crystal skulls, and he's actually just recently has changed jobs. And we spent some time talking about that. So he actually works out in space also.
Okay. Rhonda, I don't really know. I this that would be such a gear shift for me. But I tell you what I'll do, Rhonda. Make a note of that. You saw my email. If you'll write me, I will. I have garden parties where I have people who work with my crystal garden, and we'll have one in a week from this Saturday. And I throw out questions people ask, and you get 6 different readers looking at your questions. So
I know, but I'm sitting there going, I'm using a pendulum right now, Rhonda, and I'm getting a no. I'm sorry. I know that's not here.
And I take it Rex is not a wee person or anything. I take it Rex is a normal person.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
if you get a hold of me, then I can get you the answers back.
Yeah, well, go ahead and get a hold of Nancy Jean. She can go in more details about that. So, yeah, you'll get more information, a lot more information. She's such a great reader.
I'd rather not deal with reptilians. I couldn't agree with you more. But
Whoa.
but there are some that are good. I mean, if
Yes,
it depends on which generation of reptilians you've run into.
Right. In fact, on my journey, I was glad I met a reptilian before I knew that they had a bad rap out there. His name was Carl. He was absolutely wonderful. And when I went to my friend Meg to tell her about Carl and the reptilians, she freaked out on me. And I then realized that my journey was probably that I didn't have any information before I met them, but there are some really good reptilians, and there are also reptilian hybrids. So you can't lump all the reptilians all in the same way as negative. And also, if it wasn't for the reptilians being part of our society at one time, we would have never had a fight or flight situation or syndrome that we would not have survived. So we have to give it to the reptilians for our survival. Plus, there are some negative ones, but there are a lot of positive ones also. I more look at the negative ones more being the Dracos, which there are some good Dracos, and that comes under reptilians. But yeah, just don't think of all reptilians as being bad.
Okay, and this charming lady, Hirsch, you're going to have to, I think, Hershey, if you write me and talk and let me know how to reach you, then I can talk to you about if she says she's done a lot of work with elementals. So
oh, good. You probably can tell me some more stuff too, because I'm working with the elementals now. I've accepted it, but I did go in there going, "Where is Johan? Why isn't he doing this?" But apparently, it's me that's supposed to be doing it.
Okay, and the only Dracs I've ever met were ones that needed a trip to the woodshed and a ride on the wagon. Well,
I have come across quite a few or a lot of negative Dracos, but there are some positive ones. So I have quit lumping anything in as bad as good. Just like humans, we have some bad ones, we have some good ones. And that seems to be with all the ET species also. Now, there's some that might lean more towards the negative, like the reptilians in the beginning, but there's so many of them that are coming around. And as I said, I have met a great reptilian. I like him. He's Carl. But going on the reptilian spaceship, that was probably my least favorite because it don't feel very comfortable going on there. But then again, there's some good ones. That's all I can say. There are some really good reptilians.
Okay, and this is the last question I'm going to show.
Okay.
Are there different meanings in different colored dragons? And the lady who says she works with dragons, says yes, there is in dragons. So
I was going to say that's a great question. Well,
yeah,
you need to bring her on and get some answers on
yeah,
that.
that's why I told her she needs to get in touch with me, because
Yeah,
I'm very open-minded about having guests come on once I
right.
know who they are. Anyway, I try to keep these things to an hour, and I'm at 59 minutes and 58 seconds. So goodbye.
Bye bye, everybody.